Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of Overwatch.
The Toronto Defiant will not be denied.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CA Overwatch. It has been a long time since we've last done one of these. You know, I hope that it's one of many in the future that you see, but I mean, obviously no guarantees. Thankfully, we're joined by a very special guest today. I can kind of pass the mic over to him. He's lucky enough he came on beforehand. Introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself before you kind of jump into our team preview here.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Czar. I'm an esports journalist. When I first hopped on here, I was actually working for Daily Esports, but now they kind of became Upcomer, so that's the website that I work for now. I'm freelance, so I have worked for a couple other sites before, most notably the Washington Post. And yeah, I'm here to talk Overwatch League since it's also been a fat minute. I've been kind of covering mostly Valorant recently.
Yeah, I know.
Nice to go back into my homeland.
Well, I was going to say too.
Back on the bandwagon.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I was going to say last time we spoke, obviously it's great to see people kind of start and, build that career path, right? Start off with Daily Esports. Upcomers, obviously, a well-known up-and-coming, no pun intended, brand in the esports generally. And again, like that's so awesome that you're able to again write for the Washington Post for a game review. That's fantastic. So hopefully we keep growing here and hopefully, somebody watches this Defiant breakdown, the top tier analysis that you guys have been waiting for, likes what they hear, and sky's the limit. So obviously keep up the grind and thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. But when it comes to this breakdown though, where should we start, you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's just keep it simple, honestly. I know Chris and I have been out of the loop for quite some time. I've been following stuff behind the scenes. I think let's just start with our overall opinions and thoughts on the roster here. Like, there's so many different outlets, I think, that go, line by line and player by player. We can just give our general thoughts, I think, on the four major categories, which are their tanks, the DPS, the supports, and the coaching staff. And then we can kind of just give a breakdown again of where we think they're roughly going to finish as the year progresses, and then finally give our predictions for the upcoming matches with Washington and Houston Outlaws this weekend.
Yeah, I guess if we're just gonna start with like general feeling, I think we can all agree as people who have like kind of followed the Defiant over their years in the league, that with them having finally have kept coaching staff and that sort of same almost not even what's the word I'm looking for, that same vision, I guess you could say,
the cohesion,
from the people up top, that already I can feel a little bit more confident on Defiant than they have in previous years. Now, we won't sugarcoat it. Defiant have been a team that have either been bottom of the league or at best mid-table.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's going to change massively if there's only going to be a top-tier team this year, I don't think so. But I do think that this year, their floor, so to speak, in terms of like ceiling and floor, their floor is the highest it's ever been. I think this is easily going to be the best Toronto Defiant roster we've ever seen, but that bar isn't that high, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I don't think it's a hot take to suggest that this has debatably been the least successful, franchise in the Overwatch League, which is
definitely the most mediocre.
Yeah, like you look at the highs of every other team, and even the ones that are at the bottom now. You look back on season one, which again is kind of unfair because Toronto simply wasn't in Overwatch League season one, but they still reached higher highs. And the part that's like most unfortunate about that, and I know we've been negative on Defiant in the past, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say this podcast is about to be all sunshine and rainbows. The management team in the group of Overactive Media and who runs the Toronto Defiant, I know Chris and I have spoken to him quite a bit. I know you have as well. They like generally care, which I think is like one of the more annoying parts of the fan. Is it's not like they're one of those ownership
for
group
lack of caring. They're not doing this because
or lack of trying.
Hands off.
Yeah, it's not like there's some ownership groups right now that let's just call a spade a spade. They're just trying to skate through and kind of put together a competitive team while spending the least amount of money as possible in hopes that Overwatch 2 blows up and they can. But you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's a lot of organizations out there like that, and Toronto Defiant and Overactive Media are not one of them. They're willing to spend money. They care about winning. They want their fans. They want to give their fans, the championship or the trophies that they've been, clamoring for over the last, 4 years here in the Overwatch League. And it seemed like, just like last year, but even worse, because last year, they had a good start. It seemed like they started building the roster, and for the first time ever, I was like, oh my God, they might be a top 3 team that can legitimately compete for a championship, right? You keep Hisu, who I think has randomly became very underrated. Is he, a top 5 DPS in the world? Maybe not, but like there's only 5 of those. I think he's in that next tier of can be a 1B on a championship caliber team, and you surround them with Chorong and Twilight. And right there, I think you seriously have the building blocks of a championship caliber team. And just like in last year where it started with Sato and it started with Hisu, it just kind of went downhill after that, right? You get those three, you're super excited, and it's like Muse, and you're like, okay, Muse has got some potential. Maybe not the year we thought he'd have, but he's young. He can build upon that. Hop up, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I would have liked to have seen a few other players in there. And then I was just waiting for that next elite DPS player to play alongside of Hisu. And it just seemed like names kept getting, going other places, passed on.
There was a long period. There was I think it was almost like a 2-month period where we were kind of just waiting and seeing, like, okay, who's playing with Hisu?
And then it ends up being Aldo and Finale. And I don't want to sit here and disrespect Aldo or Finale, if I'm pronouncing that right. I think they're good players. I think,
Aldo and Finale,
I think they have, reasonably high ceilings. And again, if it was like Hisu's your second best DPS player and Aldo or Finale are your third best DPS players, and you just had that one extra person, I'm totally fine with that roster, right? It's not disrespect. I think Aldo has a pretty high ceiling. I've actually heard pretty good things about him.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a top
it's
three...
It's a shame that he's not with the roster. Right
I know.
I was
going to say, there's nothing they could have done about that as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Sometimes, visa things happen. They're not the first or last team to deal with that.
Yeah.
But even though I think he has a pretty good ceiling, and I've heard good things about them, when you talk about a championship caliber team, when you talk about players who are in the same tier as Hisu, Twilight, and Chorong, they're not there. And maybe they can prove me wrong, and hey, I'm more than happy to eat my words. But I was so excited for like a Yaki or, even like Decay, Glister, whomever, right? Pelican. There are so many names that you could have just landed one of them. I don't even care about the tanks, honestly. I know people are down that. We'll get to that later. If you could have landed one of them, I seriously think these guys would have been a top 3, top 2 team in NA. That kind of ceiling. And it's just really unfortunate that they came so close and it seemingly kind of just are still remaining so far.
I don't mind saying this now that all the rosters are essentially set and that all the teams are basically set as well. I remember talking to Adam Adamu, who is one of the people in charge of interactive media, especially he's very hands-on with the Defiant and the Ultra in the Call of Duty League. And I remember having a discussion with him just kind of openly in terms of, and this was before they signed Finale and Aldo, I kind of discussion of what are you looking for? And after having that long discussion with him, it was obvious that the few players that were left on the market that had that sort of skill level had some downsides to them as well.
For sure.
One of the biggest names that got thrown across was Decay. Decay was a possibility of going to the Defiant, but the risk was, and as much as some of the players and some of the coaches in the team wanted them to come across, the question marks around his more recent tumultuous times with both Dallas and Washington. And the chance of lowering morale is something they want to avoid because apparently they've had issues with that in previous years.
I mean, look at season 1 Defiant, right?
No matter what, they're looking for team coordination and everyone on the same page and not even positivity, just a good mindset, right?
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. I mean, honestly, at some point I'm almost maybe just take the risk, right? If Decay came on that team, Hisu Decay, I think you win a championship, debatably. Right, and that's a hot take. That's a hot take.
You could also have the 4th Toronto Defiant collapse.
I mean, I agree. I mean, at some point, it's almost now you've accepted the fact that you can't. Okay, I don't want to say win a championship, not with the entire Overwatch League, but a tournament or something like that, right? The K and Hisu with Chorong and Twilight have that carry potential, and as long as Muse or Hoppa can do their job, I seriously think that can be one of the better teams in the league. Consistently, you're right. Yes, they have a lower floor. But at the same time, I almost would rather take the higher ceiling. But I also agree that he wouldn't have been my first choice, right? I look at somebody like Yaki, and I know they went after Yaki. They're too smart to have not at least tried.
Yeah.
So clearly,
the problem was the coaching staff from NYXL and the former Mayhem
Kuki.
players.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I understand that, but at some point, you have to have some backup plans. And Decay maybe was there, but if it wasn't Yaki, maybe Pelican or even someone like Glister. Even if all things kind of fell apart, Glister ending up on the Florida Mayhem the Paris Eternal just seems wild to me. When again, Aldo and Finale are great, but could you not have just taken Aldo and thrown Glister in there? And maybe he doesn't hit the ceiling that some people think that he was going to when he first came into the league, but you got at least the potential that he could bring to the table in comparison to somebody like Finale. And maybe I'm wrong on that. If Finale is going to prove us all wrong on Saturday.
Or Aldo
whenever he comes in. But if you just give me a roster of Hisu, Glister, and Aldo, even that alone, maybe they're not in that top 3, I think, consistent conversation. But do I think they could get hot, right meta, and enter that top 3 realm. I actually do with that DPS lineup. If Glister performs the way I think he can perform and the meta hits him the right way. So
yeah. But when it comes to this whole roster, though, I'm kind of echoing those statements too. Where if we're looking at all three of the roles, their supports are top tier.
S tier.
It's obvious why they put so much money towards Strong and got such a successful and known talent like Twilight.
I love that. Yeah, I love Toronto.
Yeah, and then on the tank side, I think our tanks are underrated, but also not so underrated that it's like a big issue, right?
Yeah.
I just think people are really down on them because of recent form, as well as obviously some other talks in the media, especially on the side of Muse. But I feel when it comes to cutting into Overwatch 2, the flexibility and the kind of I guess on hot plus sides especially, experience
I agree.
will probably help a lot with this roster. And last but not least, the DPS. Obviously, Hisu's great. We're not going to complain about Hisu whatsoever.
Yeah.
Finale and all, they'll leave more to be desired, but at the same time, both of them are essentially given shots to say, like, you know what, Overwatch 2 is a DPS first game.
Yeah.
We're putting you in a role to succeed on this. You have a great DPS alongside you. You have the best support, besides probably Shanghai, Dallas, and maybe Glads.
Yeah.
And now we just have to see how you do. And obviously, that's not the position you want to be in if you want to compete. You can't just have a question mark on your roster. You need to have some pretty consistent check marks.
Yep.
But at the same time, I would argue that in a game where you have 5 players on your team, if 3 of them are like
fantastic
known talents, it's not going to be anything below 11.
I agree.
Yeah, and when it comes to the whole league, at least.
Yep.
I wonder how having one tank and also being a little bit what I think is less of a team-centric game now is going to mean for these players. Like, you know, I feel like what defined good and bad players in Overwatch 1 was not only their mechanical ability, but their ability to once again work as a team. Unfortunately, I honestly don't know these tanks well enough to make a call on it, but I wonder if maybe before, since they weren't rated as highly, whether it was because of a team play element or a mechanical element. Because if it was a team play element and that sort of goes down a little bit, you could see their, value rising.
I was going to say, Chris, and I know you're a little less familiar with the tanks, and I kind of want to speak on the tanks a bit, but I just kind of want to hear your just a very quick general synopsis of Toronto before you go a little bit more into the tank line, and then I'll give my quick thoughts on Hisu as well.
Yeah, I can hop on that too after,
Yeah, I mean, for mine, I'd like to say something different than what you guys have already said.
Yeah.
I think I kind of disagree in your guys' saying that we have a high ceiling. I think we have a high floor and a low ceiling. I think.
No, I don't think I said we would have had a higher ceiling if we'd gotten a decay or something.
Okay,
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
It's going to be at a high floor, so I agree.
Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
I agree. High floor, low ceiling. What does that say? Stable. But I mean, that being said, I've been excited about other rosters more before, and they've blown up in our face. I'm specifically thinking about the Surefour roster with Karev back in 2020. So at this point, I'm numb. I'm a person who's completely numb.
I think most of the
I was gonna say.
dude,
I feel
we
no
can handle
emotion.
almost anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel absolutely no emotion anymore. But yeah, that's what it is.
Well, yeah. Well, this is no doubt, and I mean, Michael, you mentioned it earlier. This is the most talented roster that Toronto's ever put together. So, very quickly,
Is it though?
Yeah, this is definitely the most
it
talented.
is,
Yeah, this is objectively the most talented roster that they put together. Twilight, Churong, and
I was gonna say, like, just Twilight alone is the best player Toronto Defiant has ever had.
yeah,
Twilight alone.
I agree with that.
Oh, okay.
Churong,
You know what? I could see Twilight. Yeah.
Twilight's the best player we've ever had, and I think Churong.
As a guy who saw Twilight live at the 2019 Grand Finals.
Yeah.
He was, how do I say it? He is top 3 Ana in the league.
Oh, he's
and
make or break.
It's an Ana meta.
Yeah, he's the kind of player who can again win you a game via his playmaking, and unlike I think some other supports we've had in the past, more specifically Karev and Lastro, who I think can also win you games but can also lose you games. I feel like Twilight is either he's either consistent or he's winning you games. You know what I mean? I don't think he has the low floor as those other flex supports had previously. And again, you look at our main supports in the past. Everyone loves Roki. I think I love Roki as well, but you compare him to like, Kellex. Oh, anyways, was it Kellex? Yeah, Kellex and oh my God, who was the guy from Paris? Former, he was French. He came in halfway through to replace Kellex.
Oh,
can't believe I'm blanking on him.
Shoot, I remember that one too. I forgot that one too. That was a while ago. That was like
oh my God, yeah, but he's such a big player. Everyone knows. Anyways, oh my God, I can't believe I disrespected this guy by not knowing his name. He's very well known. Yeah, please look it up. And then you even look at last year, Anson G.
You can't get too mad
I
with
swear
how
it
much
starts with a
time
K.
Defiant has changed their roster.
I swear it starts with a K. And Anson G. Anyways, we've never really had a great main support either, right? And so I think Charong absolutely checks out the box of being, this is by far the best support line we've ever had. I think Hiso's also going to finally look a lot better because, you mentioned Aldo and Finale. As much as I'm not super high on them, they're a lot... Cruz, thank you.
It was actually Cruz, yeah.
They're a lot better than Neist. So I don't know why we ended up picking him up back when we did, but I think, now that you don't have to throw a ton of resources in Sato, Neist, and Lasher, I think Hiso's actually going to have more of an ability to shine. The last thing I want to mention on the tanks before we kind of get into just overall tiers and predictions, I've heard a lot of people kind of be down on Toronto Defiant's tank line and, Pladchat and Tethel Crouch and stuff. And, they're all very smart individuals, but there is no more tank line. Like this is Overwatch 2. Tank lines do not exist. And so while I understand looking at it again, I always, exactly, but even still, there's only one. So when you look at, yes, you look at Dallas and you think, oh man, compare Fearless and Hanbin to Muse and Hotba. And yes, they're like significantly better. But when you just go 1v1 and you compare Fearless to Muse or Hanbin to Hotba, obviously Dallas's tanks are better. There's no question. But the difference is not as substantial as when you look at it as a tank line. And I think people are still kind of rating tank depth equivalent to tank line, and they're different in my opinion. I would rather, again, a more developed support line and DPS line. Because I think
those roles aren't
there's two of them
as significantly as tank.
Exactly, and I think that because there's only one tank, you're going to see more people have to switch between tanks, either in the middle of the map, attack or defense, and that is where I think a player like Hotba can be overlooked a little bit because he's so flexible. He's notorious for being flexible. I think that he can again be a player who might not win you a game, but also might not lose you a game either. And if Muse can simply just improve his trajectory that he was on last year, which again he's only turning 19, still super young. He was
a rookie last year.
Yeah, it's not even remotely.
And he helped the Glads reached the countdown. Like they won the final.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's more than reasonable to assume he improves. I don't think the tank line is nearly as concerning as some people are making out to be. Is it the best part of this roster? No. For me, it really is another DPS player. If you could again make a trade and somehow acquire Yaki, I don't know how you'd ever do it, but that would be the cake on, or the cherry on top, if you will. But sorry, Mike, you can kind of give your last sort of opinions here on the
I was
tanks.
Gonna say, I completely agree with everything you said. The only thing I would say for this team is if you're looking at specifically if you're looking at importance of role right now in Overwatch 2, I got to play it luckily enough. I got it in on day one, and I've been watching a lot of streams. I wrote some articles about the alpha. I got to interview with a lot of the pro players and casters who played in the alpha. Everyone agrees that each role is more important. Supports kind of feel less useful, but it's really more of a mindset change as opposed to them actually being worse. You really have to change how you play support just because one tank's gone. And tank is both more important, but also more dangerous. You don't have a person healing for you. You can have a support healing for you, but they got to heal for themselves, so on and so on. I personally feel... Oh, sorry, if you want to say something.
I was going to say, I actually think that supports are going to end up becoming the most important part of the game. Maybe second to DPS. I think people are just... because they look at maybe the overall, in theory, carry, pop-off, killing potential, they're like, oh, they're not as good as they were before. But I think the fact there's only one tank, your ability to, again, keep up the tank while simultaneously position yourself so you can't be dove, while simultaneously being able to damage the opponents, while simultaneously being able to peel, if you're Lucio, for your DPS, for your tanks when required. Lucio is almost in some ways, an off tank, where it's yes, it's his job to heal and play the support role, but he also needs to peel in certain instances if he thinks that he can support, he's doing a flank and secure that elimination. I think unlike, Overwatch 1, where maybe you try to break shield and defeat the main tank, Overwatch 2 might end up trending more, who can dive or kill the enemy supports faster. And then once you see an Ana go down, that's when the fight's over. But I guess we'll see, right? We're theory crafting pretty hard here, but I actually really like the fact that Toronto, built a really strong support line. I just wish they had one more DPS alongside of it.
And it kind of all comes down to that. Obviously, we're predicting how the roster is going to do based on how the gameplay is right now. We have no idea how it's going to change in the upcoming even a week. Yeah. The patch notes that came out today already are pretty significant. Zenyatta immediately looks 10 times more playable than he ever did in the beta.
Yeah, exactly.
Just from one change. So it's obviously we're kind of going off of just the skill we have on the roster and knowing how flexible it can be for the future of Overwatch 2.
Exactly.
And I think in that sense, having Twilight and Chorong is amazing.
Oh, I can't wait.
Even though Finale and Aldo might not be as good as getting other DPS for that role, we still have the depth. We still have the flexibility. Oh,
No, I think Chris had to go. That was one of the reasons why. I mean, I thought he'd chime in there and just quickly
he did
say,
he had to go. Right.
yeah. So for everyone who's, there's no technical difficulties, Chris just ran out of time here, so we can kind of wrap things up fairly shortly. I totally agree with what you're saying, though. And again, it's one of those things that's where I think flexibility is going to kind of come into play. It's one of the reasons why I wanted somebody like Yaki alongside Hisu, but again, I feel like I'm, beating the drum.
Getting two players instead of just one.
Yeah,
is a good decision, just because that was the problem most Toronto Defiant was in last year, where they had Hisu and Nice, and that was it. So if either of them couldn't fit a position, you had to sign someone else. Aspire came in, he did good. Obviously, Logix was on the bench, but he didn't really get to be played that much, so it was just kind of. He couldn't. There wasn't much communication between the team and
Nice just wasn't that good. Yeah. Let's just call it a spade a spade. Like, knock on wood.
Having Aspire and having Finale and all, though, at least gives me more confidence that if they are in a position where composition wise they're in trouble, they can patch it up enough where they can still stay relatively competitive.
Yeah. And it's tough because, again, they do have a Korean roster, so I don't know who you necessarily pick up. Again, if you can make a trade, that'd be great. I just don't know how trades work in Overwatch. I mean, I can figure craft some fun ones. Do you have to dangle a Twilight to get a Yaki and a Gangnam Gym, right? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, do you kind of look at right? Like, now I love Twilight.
That's speculation, though.
Oh, we're more than just speculation. Never gonna happen. But regardless, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to make to convince myself that Defiant's gonna make it all okay. But anyways. Getting into more.
Do you want to sum this up with the rankings?
Just the overall tier, right? Like, where do you think more realistically, this team's going to end up here?
I think it's completely fair to say that, at least in the power rankings that I've watched, out of the content creators that I enjoy to watch, in particular the two that I saw that I thought were pretty spot on in terms of most teams' rankings, to be honest, were Avril and Platchat.
Mm-hmm.
Avril was definitely the one that I lent to a little bit more, especially for the rankings of the Defiant. I think they're going to be, if you're looking at every team in the league, they're probably going to be in that 8 to 10 range. I don't think they're going to, and if they do fall, I don't think they're going to fall as low as 12. I think that's their floor. 12 place is their floor.
8 to 12,
I think 7th, 6th place is their peak.
Mm-hmm.
And that would definitely be like relying on teams above them to collapse.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's going to be because they're going to pop off. I think it's going to be other teams that get worse.
What about just in the East? Because again, it's so hard to predict. Like, even if a team comes like 8th, are they truly the 8th best team? Depending on how many.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
There's so many variables. Yeah.
If you're looking at just NA.
West.
The one up, or sorry, just the West.
Yeah.
I think the one upside to the West is because there's more teams. There's more teams that are towards the bottom of the rankings. Yeah. There's more teams you can beat up on to increase your record and finish in a better position. So I personally think that Toronto Defiant should easily be top half in NA. They should easily be top half. I don't think that teams like Paris, like Boston, like Vancouver, and even to an extent, like London, and even to an extent like New York, like Mayhem, I don't think their floor is as set as Toronto's is.
For sure.
And even though they do have the talent, there's that variability that can lead you to championships, but also can lead you to collapse. And if there's one thing that Toronto Defiant has been trying to avoid because of their previous seasons, it's another collapse.
No, and I agree. And they have some really good building blocks where I don't think you're going to see, at least I can't imagine you're going to see like a situation last year, right, where they get rid of everyone except for Hisu, or they get rid of everyone except for Logix. This definitely seems a team that they got minimum. They get rid of everyone except for, Charang, Twilight, and Hisu. And I think there's even a good chance that they end up keeping, maybe like Muse, for instance, if he goes well. Or if shows that he, although, maybe he's not a true number 2 or number 1, if he still shows he's very talented, you want to keep him as just that third option. I think that also, I'd be more than willing to kind of bring him back and see what he can do. Or Finale if he, proves all of us wrong. So I agree with you. I think that there's a clear top 4 in my opinion. I think it's Dallas, Atlanta, Glads, and San Francisco. I think that people are kind of overrating Houston because they see potential that they could reach with the right meta without also recognizing I think a lot of different flaws. Again, no main tank, no main support. I think last show maybe is a little bit overrated, the same way I thought Kareem was overrated. Iris I actually like quite a bit, and they obviously have a really good DPS line like Pelican, pounds, right? That's not everyone knows they have fantastic DPS. And
you still have Dante.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the craziest thing
and no, I agree. So I think that Toronto's going to be in that like Houston, Washington kind of tier where you're like, you know what? I think they're a more consistent version of Houston, Washington, but I think they probably have a lower ceiling than Houston, Washington. So I could see them kind of hitting that 5, 6, 7 spot. I think if they get 8th in NA, I'd be pretty disappointed. But if they end up if Washington just puts it together and pops off, I think you can kind of be okay with that. But I think they're actually a better team than both Houston and Washington, which is why I actually think they're going to beat Washington 3-1 in this upcoming weekend, and I think they'll take Houston 3-2. Fingers crossed, we'll see. But that's sort of my rough prediction, I think, going into this weekend. How about you?
I personally believe that. How do I say it? I like to think in terms of the Defiant and their roster right now. I don't think what we see in these first 5 games is what the roster is going to be because of Aldo not being here because of the team still being relatively new. I think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains. So I think they're going to go 1-1. I think they're going to beat Washington, and I think they're going to lose to Houston. I think they're going to lose to Houston 3-2, so it'll still be a close game. Yeah. But I don't think this is going to be indicative of how the season's going to go. And in a way, it almost is just because they're going to be 1-1. They're going to be even. Yeah. They're going to be pretty normal. But at the same time, I also have a general feeling that just because that downside of not being able to have Aldo, which I think everyone expected to be the starting DPS alongside Houston,
100%.
It's going to affect them. Yeah. But it's also that potential of like, if I'm proven wrong and they go 2-0, I'll be really happy because that means Finale's probably working out better than expected. Yeah. Maybe the supports are way more impactful than I think. And maybe one of Muse or Hotba is just proving everybody wrong in terms of the tank line that they thought of for the Defiant.
And that's what I'm kind of relying on. I think support's going to be more impactful than people think, and I think you're going to see if it's dive with Monkey, I think Muse is going to be fine, or if it is like one of those things that you're going to see a few different switches, I think Hotba's going to be able to pull it through because I don't know how Piggy can play Monkey, for instance. Are they going to try to force a Doomfist or a Diva? We'll see. But if it does become an instance where Monkey is what we've seen people running, I think has the potential to be really good. You put him with Hisu, and then you have the back line of Churong and Twilight keeping Muse up on his Monkey. I think that we're going to surprise some people. I don't know enough about Finale. I hope he picked him up for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like he had some good seasons and some good tournaments under him. But I agree with you that, once we get Aldo, I think we'll finally see what this team's sort of made of.
Yeah. And then there's no slight to Finale. Honestly, that whole bust, the Uprising Academy team was one of those teams that kind of surprised people from the get-go in contenders. Yeah. But it's also one of those things, too, where at least another thing, which I think is almost in Finale's favor, like I mentioned earlier, is that it is a new game.
Yeah, exactly.
There is that aspect of, like, not MMR reset, so to speak, but there is that aspect of the playing field has been leveled a little bit for those really really long tenured players in the league. Yep. And I'm personally of the opinion that a lot of these teams that run rookies actually might have more of an advantage than people think, which is why I agree that Shock is probably going to be a top 4 set. Whether it's definitely top 4 in the West, I would say definitely top 5 in the league.
Yep, I agree. We'll kind of just end it there again. If nothing against Finale either, I simply just don't know enough about it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I scouted all of his games, and I haven't.
I honestly think, too, another good thing about these first 2 games against Washington and Houston is it's not like they're facing the best teams in the league.
Yeah, it's not like they're facing the worst either.
It's going to be a pretty good litmus test.
Yeah, I think it's a great test. I think those are 2 teams in their tier, and if they get blown out by both, I think I'm very disappointed.
That's
the concern. Yeah. But if you know what, if it's 2 competitive games, I'd be happy. Even if they go 0-2.
3-2.
If it's exactly. If it's like a 3-2, 3-1, but it's a close 3-1 to like Houston, for instance, and you can clearly see, and maybe it's like Finale is not necessarily pulling his weight. Then fair enough. I think there's still something to be excited about. If it's 2-3-0s, man, I'm gonna lose my mind. Anyways, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Dude, close it out. You give your final thoughts.
I was gonna say that if it's 2-3-0s to start off, and let's just say maybe it goes a little bit further where they have a worse start proceeding, I could see then maybe the idea of a trade floating around or something like that, because I don't think the Defiant are in a position where they can just sit on another losing season.
No, I totally agree.
I think mid-table has to be the minimum, or in that mid-tier. That's their minimum.
I agree. I wonder if they re-pick up the Decay conversation. Man, I just want to see Decay. I know it's risky. It's so risky, and I understand all of the logic behind not wanting to open that can of worms.
Season, there's really no point not.
But just imagine putting with Decay with that backline, if he's mentally right in a new game where you can pop. I don't think he's going to play for Justice.
Well, yeah, with Happy there, that is
with Happy and Assassin, and that's nothing against Decay. The problem is they have 3 incredibly talented DPS. You can only play 2. Share the wealth. Share the wealth. Washington, what's going on? Give us one of those 3. I'd even take Happy. It doesn't really make sense that he's stupid. I would take it. Anyways,
we'll see.
So thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This one a little bit longer than we thought. Yep, no problem. And hopefully we can do this again sometime. And hopefully Toronto comes out here and like I said, proves a bunch of us wrong, and Finale has a great season.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Thanks so much. Bye. Bye.